What's up, electric people? Welcome back. Today on the podcast, we have Reno Mendenhall. So Reno is a lifelong friend of mine, happened to be coming through Southern California, going on a motorcycle trip. And in passing, we met up and I sat him straight in the chair and we recorded a podcast. So he is a wealth of knowledge and experience. He started in the direct-to-home business, 15, 16 years ago. We knew each other selling automation back in the day. He was one of the early sales leaders at Vivint Solar and ended up actually going with our competitor at the time, Solar City. I was his sales leader at that time. We worked very closely together, and we had an awesome opportunity to talk about that and what that was like and how much you evolve as a salesperson and as a decision maker and as a sales leader, which was cool. Also had a chance to talk about the business that he's running now and kind of the different path that he's been on. He has great advice about how to be a high performer in sales, how to be a productive and impactful sales leader. It was kind of good, kind of bad, about halfway through, maybe a little bit more. For some reason, the equipment stopped recording. We were talking about some deeply personal stuff. Reno had a situation where one of his daughters at age 7 got diagnosed with pulmonary blastoma, cancer in her lungs. And it was very touching to go through and talk about it. Reno's an excellent father and an excellent leader kind of in all aspects of his life. And that portion doesn't exist. It was cut. So, we kind of come in and out of that part. I wish you guys could hear it. But, big nod to Reno and the man that he is and the sales leader that he is. So tune in. I think you'll get a lot of nuggets from somebody that has employed these principles in a lot of different ways in a lot of different businesses. So let's get to it. This is Reno Mendenhall. The street is where we create. We call it suburbanpreneurship.
Mixing big company resources with an entrepreneurial spirit.
This is Electric People. Impromptu podcast. You were coming by to say hi, and I plopped you down and put you on a microphone, man.
I'm straight out of the rental car.
Straight out of the rental car. You guys, I'm FOMOing pretty hard because you're going on a motorcycle trip that I was an early founder of and cannot go. So
yeah, we've been wondering, did someone do something
someone
on the past few?
Someone quit scheduling trips in advance and they started scheduling them like 5 minutes away. And I'm always like, who can make these?
That's fair. You know? That's so fair.
Dude, I love motorcycle riding so much.
Like, no, you do.
It's like a complete, it's such a meditative soul reset for me. Not to be a total hippie, but it actually is,
and we miss being in that state with you.
Yeah.
So you need to come back.
Yeah. What happened was my kids got older, so they're doing all this stuff now. Yep. And then everything gets planned and they're like, hey, 2 weeks from now work. And I'm like, hold on.
Rocco's 15.
14.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a busy time.
Yeah. Well, you get it.
I get it.
Your oldest is
16.
Whoa.
Youngest is 2.
So let's see. Okay. So when you started, you didn't have kids. When you started door-to-door sales.
First summer, my wife sent me a picture of our pregnancy test with our first kids when I was on the doors.
Wow.
In Nashville.
Wow.
It was crazy.
What year was that?
2008? 2007.
Wow.
2007. Isn't that nuts?
That is nuts. Yeah.
Were you at Apex at that time?
Well, yeah.
My first year was 2008.
Yeah, so we became Vivint in 2010. So I started my first summer was 04. I was
No, I remember going to a training at Thanksgiving Point, and this little skinny guy turned up in an orange backpack giving the training. I'm like, who is that guy?
Was I he?
Was I he?
It was I he.
You were him.
I didn't have...
And your head was shaved.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, it was you.
I do that I almost did that the other day.
This guy.
Yeah.
I'm like, little did I know I'd be riding motorcycles with him 20 years later.
I'm trying to think of what backpack I had.
I don't know. I don't know.
Steer away from Outdoors in general for obvious reasons.
It was vivid. You had no choice.
Wow.
I don't know what it was. I swear it was an orange backpack. Maybe not.
You're probably right.
Maybe not.
You have a keen memory for details.
But you strolled in and you gave a great training. And then I think that was one of my first introductions to door-to-door sales.
Wow.
And I was in.
I used to do those trainings for some reason. I did it for 2 years before it was a job. Just completely for free.
Totally.
Literally just writing all the training and then giving it.
I remember you doing that.
Yeah.
And not just for your own region, but for the company.
Yeah.
I remember that. Even at Vivint Solar, you wrote the whole thing for Vivint Solar.
Well, a lot of it was written from before. So it transferred.
But it helped us a ton.
Yeah.
Did that.
Yeah, dude, honestly, it's kind of a joke that I didn't get paid for it. There were years that I did get paid. It wasn't much, but it is one of those things that I believe in, like adding value and like behaving as if, and then eventually, like more than the comp, it taught me how to do it. Like I remember when I first wrote that first manual, like I used to just give the trainings, right? But then when I wrote the first manual, there was like hardly any money in that. But I was thinking at the time, I was like, well, people pay money to go to college, right? So it's like, this is going to teach, but it taught me how to do it. And I've used that same like template format, method, structure. Like it forced me to like think out a lot of like my theories and stuff on how to do it. Yeah. And so I really feel like I came out knowing how to do it, which was the benefit. You know what I mean?
It benefited a ton of people too. I think you made a lot of huge deposits doing that too, because you became the guy that was like,
oh, the little skinny guy with the orange backpack. That's
what I have to say about this. But no, it was great. I remember that.
You want to know a funny story about doing that? So we used to have to do those. You had those quizzes that you would have to take the quiz and pass
travel money
to get your travel money. So we used to get, what was it, like a couple $100 to drive across the country?
I don't know, but it was so important. We were all like passing the quiz.
And so I don't know if I ever told you this. So we wanted people to be sure to read it. And like pretty much any quiz, at least I feel like if I read it, I could probably pick the best
retain
answer.
some of it. Yeah.
Yeah. And so the year that I had wrote that, this is a lesson in making mistakes and like dialing in your ways. But I was like, well, I'm going to make it so you have to read the training modules or else you can't pass it, which makes sense. But I remember Jeff Johns. You remember Jeff Johns?
Oh, yeah.
Jeff Johns was a Vim and Solar early days. Yeah. And he was, in my first year selling, he came out and like visited and like trained. And I remember he'd get like 2 before the meeting and he would wear bright red Dickies shorts.
Yeah.
And like bright blue Dickies shorts. And so he was trying to take this quiz to get his travel money and he could not pass it. Because I had written
experience doing a tour guide.
Yeah, because everything was, and it was a hard written quiz. So if the way you overcome an objection is like agree, restate, anecdote, and transition, it would be something like empathize, restate, anecdote, move on. So it's like he'd be like, these are all good, and I'm like, have you read the training? He's like, I've been selling for like 8 years. I'm like, you got to read the training, dude. So it worked. It was just like a bad focus, but I remember so many people were upset.
Yeah,
and then the questions. It wasn't like the answer to number 4 was C because the questions would rotate.
Yeah.
And so you couldn't like figure it out. Everyone was so mad. Like I was so proud of like the quiz that I wrote in the training.
That's amazing. I remember those days.
And everybody was so mad because the test was, honestly, it was stupidly difficult. Like it was like.
It was worth it though. If you wanted them to read, I remember that so clearly now.
Yeah.
So clearly.
Because you got like a key of the answer.
Or you had reps that are like, hey, what's the answer to this?
It's really just like supposed to be like a compliance and like an introduction to training. And it was so dang hard, dude.
How do you do that again? You should incorporate that somehow to get something.
All right.
Just to make
even if it's like
the reading
even
stuff.
if it's to get like some throwback gear from back in the day.
Like the special edition gear.
Yeah.
That was so good. That was so good.
So you nowadays, like a lot of the people that are hearing this, Reno, they were not at this company when you were a legend at this company. Can you believe that?
Yeah, that's crazy.
You still probably feel the same.
I feel the same.
But that was a long time ago.
Yeah, it was like 8 years ago? 9 years ago. 8 years ago.
So the story that I love about you coming into Vivint Solar, I wasn't there. But I think it's Adam Cox that tells the story. Do you know where I'm going?
Oh, yeah. Please tell it.
So back in the day, it's funny, like one of the only jobs I ever applied for, I applied for a job at Safeway when I was a kid, like a little, I was probably 16. No, but I wore a shirt and tie.
That's so impressive. I've seen you in a shirt and tie like twice.
I know. Yeah. And one time I had shorts on and red high tops. So that, you can tell me if that counts. But I remember my parents, I was like, I want to get a job. I was like, all right, well, dress nice. And I was like, okay. I'm sure I had like
church clothes,
baggy pants and my church tops on. And so I went to Safeway. I filled out an application. I met the manager, introduced myself. They never called me back. The second time I applied for a job was at Vivint Solar. So I had been a regional manager at Vivint. And then the way we were picking markets is there was an application that Chance had written. And I remember it had stuff in there like...
This was the first time we were ever getting this was the first time it ever happened at Vivint Solar. Oh, right?
Yeah. So I was coming into it. It was the only thing that I knew.
Yeah.
And so it had stuff like, okay, well, what are three examples that would show that you still have gas in the tank.
Yep.
And, like, you had to like think about it. And I remember I like filled out this application and gave it to Greg Butterfield, and I sat down for a DM interview with Greg Butterfield, who was our CEO at the time. And it was just after you had done the story that I'm telling. So everybody had come into corporate. And I remember I saw Mueller because I was at Vivint.
Yes.
And so I remember I saw Mike Mueller come in, and he was in like a suit and tie. Like all these like solar guys were dressed like my Safeway ambitions. And so I remember you guys all had interviews to get markets, and I thought it was the strangest thing. Because at Vivint, you just decide you're a manager and you're a manager. But at Sunrun, we had limited funds, or at Vivint Solar, we were like, there was a method to starting these markets. We could only have like 10 or 12 or something like that at the time. And so everybody was lined up. And the way that I've heard it's probably become legend is that Reno, you didn't yet work there, right? Or you did?
I had been out.
Oh, you'd been
learn how to do it in Hesperia and Victorville with Adam Cox.
I thought you were in Concord with.
That's where it was. Then I moved down to Concord with Stumboski until they opened up another market.
Got it. So you had a couple months.
Yeah, a couple months.
So everybody says they're sitting there and they're all like outside the office in their ties with their little paper like applications to be hired as a DM. And they say Reno shows up with his sunglasses on his motorcycle on your black Harley Fat Boy, pulls up, walks into Chance's office, talks for a minute, walks out, high fives, drives away on the motorcycle, and everyone's like, oh, he just got Orange County. Pretty true.
That is. Except I do remember, I don't even think I rode my motorcycle. I mean,
no, that was a key part of that.
And I swear I dressed up. Because I remember I've never like dressed up for an interview, and I'm like, what am I doing? I look so stupid. And I did dress up, I think.
It's evolved to like you walked in, like
some high fives were probably in there though, for sure.
Gave a kiss to the secretary, put your feet on the table, told them how it's going to go. Yeah.
What's up?
Stormed out of there with exactly what you wanted.
That's so funny. I wish that story were 100% true. Well, I don't think
go on believing it. The way
please do. Please do. It makes me look way cooler.
You're one of the first people I knocked doors with when I came to Solar.
That is another very fond memory of mine. And I remember the street. I think I told you the other day. I remember the street in Orange that we knocked.
Yeah.
And
I remember it too, except for all the streets in Orange kind of look the same.
They do look the same, but I could go back to it right now, 100%. But I remember you came back, and Ty kind of, as everyone knows who's probably listening to this, Ty kind of came in, and then within like a month, he was like the man. Like came in, learned everybody's best practices, incorporated them up in Thousand Oaks, and then was on top ever since.
I appreciate that.
So how much do you think that knocking with me attributed to you?
Pretty much every positive thing that's happened in my career since that.
Is because of that? Yeah.
No, honestly, it was profound because, again, we were talking about, and you've done tons and tons of training, and you had a very similar experience in alarms. You very quickly rose up and were like competing for like the rep of the year and best new manager and all that stuff. And so it was actually pretty interesting because when I came down, I was like, okay, who do I need to knock with? And Chance was like, well, you got to I knocked with Jake Bevins first. I knocked with John Sanders second. I knocked with you third. But Jake and John were both in Thousand Oaks where I was. So I had to like travel down to Orange to knock with you.
Yep.
Trying to think who else, if there's anyone else that I went out and worked with. Anyway, but I remembered that like I didn't know anything about solar, but I knew something about door-to-door sales. And so that's like, it's such an interesting like place to be, right? Because I could feel when we needed to transition. I could feel when it had been long enough, but I couldn't do it because I didn't have the words, Yep. And so I think I've told you this before, but I remember you like walking down the street and like talking to people, and you were like following up with people. There was that guy across the street, and I think he had cancer and then like recovered from it. Am I remembering that guy right?
Yeah.
And then like he had cancer, so he couldn't sell him. Yeah. And he was better, so we went back and like tried to sell him. And that's crazy. Yeah, it's weird, dude. Like I've knocked millions of doors, and sometimes like certain things are so clear. Same. And then I remember going across the street. I remember the house that we got into that day, and you were talking to some girl who you just had like in the palm of your hand, just like captivated. But I remember in alarm sales, it's very precise, and you transition at the right time. And I remember thinking, oh, solar is a lot more conversational. It's a lot more laid back. People will talk to you. And then I took something from that day, and I always oversimplify it when I tell the story that like where you would knock doors and be like, you should do this. I would. And I was like, it wasn't that, but kind of
close. Yeah. Because I think a lot of people, like my whole thing with selling, and I don't know who this audience is that's listening to this. Is it all sales?
Yeah. So it's our internal, but there's a lot of people that don't work here that find their way onto this show. Who are you people, and why do you listen?
That's cool. because Ty's the man.
We've got some in Indonesia we see pop up every now and then.
Really?
So shout out to Indo.
That's so awesome. But I think in all of my sales career, I think what people like is they just like to be told by a professional what to do.
I agree.
They just do. Like you go to a car dealership or you go fix your car and they're like, if someone asks you, well, what do you want us to do? Like, I don't know. Check my car. Let me know. You tell me what to do. Or even when you're like, I built one house in my life, and if anyone's gone through that experience, it's like a lot. And my builder would always ask, what do you want me to do? What do you want me to do? Like, dude, just tell me what you would do, and I will do it. And I think that's how a lot of people, especially with solar, they're like, you're the professional. Tell them what you would do truthfully. And I think that goes a long way.
Yeah.
A long way.
Well, and a lot of times when you give them an option, you think you're being nice. Like you think you're being like, I don't want to overstep my bounds, but really it builds buying pressure in people because they're not the expert, right? So I always think about it like, say, I always give this comparison. Like, say we're going mountain biking and we're going down a trail that you've been down 1,000 times and I've never been down it.
Yep.
And we pull up to the top of it and you're like, okay, so this one's kind of gnarly. Do you want to go down it? I'd be like, should I not? And then like all of a sudden I'm like, do you think I'm not good enough to go down it? And like all of these things happen. And then if I'm like, well, sure, and be like, okay, like what, like the uncertainty that's built there is actually a disservice.
Yep.
Whereas if we got to the top of that run and said, hey, I've been down this one 1,000 times and it's a little gnarly, but you can do it. Yesterday I brought someone up here that had way less experience than you. So we're going to get to this point where I'm going to tuck and you got to stay right on my tire. There's a pretty big jump, but I know you can do it. I'd be like, all right.
Sure.
And I would follow you. But if you asked me, do you want to hit the big jump? I'd be like, I don't know. Right. And we do that in selling all the time.
That's a great
do I do this or this? And they're like, what I really want is to be confident right now.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
No, that's a good point. I 100% agree.
So it was funny knocking because generally, you know, in alarm sales, and I've learned a lot about selling since then. I had early in my selling career, I felt like if I stopped talking, they would say no, you know?
Yeah. So we've all been there.
So you just talk way too much and then they say no.
Talk them out of it.
Yeah, you just make yourself tired and then the result is the same. But what I've really learned in just kind of like my second half of my career here, and a lot of it is to that day where it's like, one, if you're going to tell me no, I'd rather get that now before I spend any energy.
Absolutely.
Like that would be better. But the level of, Jason Allen calls it cheerful indifference, that you're kind of the model of. You and he both sell very similarly, but it was one of those things where it's like, listen, the tone or the sentiment felt like I'm out here. It was like 4:00. So it's like, I'm out here till 8:30. A couple people are going to do it. Might as well be you because I'm talking to you. You seem cool.
Yep.
I would do it if I were you. But if not, it kind of doesn't matter because someone's going to do it. So let me just show you and then I'll get out of your way.
Yeah.
And I remember the pressure being like 0. But I also remember being like, I can't put that in a training manual. Like, I can't.
Yeah.
How do you write that? Because it was not a script. It was literally like you saying, have you heard about this? Oh, well, let me tell you. And honestly, if you can do it, you should. It's better than what you're doing now.
Totally.
And it was so direct and so personal that it literally changed the way that I sold.
But I think if people just realize, like, if you can, like, humanize yourself pretty quickly on the doors or in any sales, I think that's a huge key. And if you do it like that and be honest with people, like, listen, hey, if this works out for you, awesome. I think it will. I'll do it if it does. If it doesn't, totally fine.
Yeah.
And
That's the thing.
That's exactly what
transported me back to that street.
But then people are like, hey, this guy's genuine. He actually cares. But if it's not working out for me, he's not going to push it, which is absolute truth. So,
yeah, that was awesome. It was like,
that actually did transform me back to a little bit.
I know.
You kind of get in like the mode where you're just, that's awesome.
You found your tone.
Yeah.
And then you started to go.
I could keep going.
Tone and low friction.
That's right.
So there's 2 of my favorite Reno pictures ever. Well, 3, if you count the Top Gun promo that you did a long time ago with the
pie shooting in
with
my
the
face.
So we should see if we can find that video for like to splice this in. But
Please do.
Reno photographs and films well, as you can tell.
I just asked, looking at the camera, if this added to my face. So it probably doesn't. Probably don't photograph as well as we used to.
Well, we did this promo where the idea was Reno was this like young hotshot in the sales scene. So he was in a Top Gun jumpsuit with the aviator sunglasses.
Val Kilmer.
Yeah, and then we had a red camera. It's like when the red cameras were brand new, and it would shoot at like tons of frames per second. So they lined Reno up in front of the camera and just shot food at him in super slow motion.
They're like, hey, How did we even do that?
I don't know.
You put your face in.
I don't remember.
Yeah.
I don't think I shot that one, but I remember it, and it was so awesome. And that's all it was. There was no, it wasn't
12 inches
than that.
Face.
Yeah,
They just shot food at you, and you just had to let it hit your face.
and that's it.
Yeah, and that was it.
Yeah.
It turned out great.
So there's a photo of that's pretty good. But the first photo is crockpot summer. Is that
Hot summer.
yeah, with your family in the extended stay, the crockpot.
No, exactly.
Yeah. So tell some of these people that are coming into leadership now
Yeah,
what the roots of. I love these old stories because honestly, like,
and they're
It's-
so good.
well, it's what the industry was actually built off.
And now you literally are in you have an entire room dedicated to a podcast when this whole room was probably the size of what we lived in for months.
Yeah.
So I think it was my third summer with Vivint, and we spent 108 days in a hotel, like an extended stay. And at that time,
Wyoming, right?
in Wyoming, well, we were in Alaska.
Okay.
In Alaska, and then Alaska's only so big, and we had a really big team. So half of us, I was like, hey, dude, I'm just going to take half of our guys down to like the Seattle, Washington market, and then knock like the Tri-Cities area and leave the other half up to finish out the summer because Alaska's just really small, really, really small. And so I had 2 kids at the time, a wife that's pregnant, and we're in a travel lodge, like a travel lodge that's literally as big as this room.
Yeah, I remember.
And-
We gotta find the picture and put it in here. But it was like the 2 twin beds,
2 twin beds,
the low dresser, and the TV.
and then there's a closet that was open, kind of. And so my wife had to tape a blanket so we could put our kid there because I'd come home late.
Yeah.
And every time I'd come home, she would either like get the flashlight on and like serve me dinner in the dark, or we'd eat like outside, like in the
hallway.
like the outside hallway. We had like a crock pot to make dinner, and we met in someone's room every day. And my kids would go down to the lobby for, you know how they have like the worst continental breakfast ever, get breakfast every day.
Open their muffins out of the cellophane.
Yeah, and my wife did that for a long time. I don't know if maybe they do. You don't hear stories like that anymore, though.
Oh.
Like 108 days in a hotel.
Oh yeah, no.
40 plus in a travel lodge with kids. That's insane. But
What does she do during the day?
we taught my daughter how to ride a bike in the Outback parking lot. I
Outback
remember the
Steakhouse?
Outback Steakhouse parking lot.
Which daughter would that have been?
But it was Marley. It was Marley.
Wow, dude.
Or Laney, I can't remember. I just remember one cheering for one when I was on the doors and my wife sent me a video of them in the parking lot of the Outback and my little daughter cruising around. It was awesome.
Hey, Mel's a good woman, dude.
Great woman.
Can you imagine like being in that little room with 3 kids,
2 kids and being pregnant.
2 kids and being pregnant?
Having to smell the smells of a travel lodge.
Yeah. But was that, wait, you said that was in Washington? That was in Tri-Cities?
Mhm.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I was interested.
I thought that was in your Wyoming years.
No, but Wyoming, we also did the same thing. So Wyoming, you're right. Wyoming, in Alaska, we actually got housing and then came down and stayed in hotels. But in Wyoming, we'd spend every day in a hotel. You're exactly right.
That's wild.
They all kind of meshed together.
So that's the second best picture.
Good.
The third best picture.
I'll give you that picture. That one's like,
Give me that picture.
every time anything goes hard, I'm like, I'm just so great.
At least you don't have a crock pot plugged in,
Yes.
waiting
2
for you to
kids.
get home, and then you're going to eat dinner by flashlight.
That's one of my favorite pictures. It really is.
Yeah, dude, honestly, it says so much. Like, and it's funny too. I always think like, okay, so you're newly married, so like your father-in-law is like, honey, like this is
All my in-laws are doctors too. They're all doctors. And one of them's a lawyer. They're like, there's 4 doctors, a lawyer, and a banker. And I'm like, guys, I'm just going to go stay in a hotel with your daughter and your sister for 108 days.
Oh man.
Traveling salesman. And hope I make some money. Let's hope.
Oh, that's amazing.
He was actually really cool. He was actually probably the coolest person about what I decided to do, just because he realized like how like important that skill was and how much you could make and like provide for your family. He was actually really cool about it.
But you know what it is, dude? Like, it's funny because most people that are like, that figure something out, and you've had a career of figuring, so you're in the process of figuring stuff out right now. We'll talk about that. But most people that figures, it looks like that, right? Like,
100%.
have you seen that picture of Bezos at Amazon when he's like an employee
At the desk?
at the desk, and he's wearing that baggy like button-up shirt. He looks like a completely different person, by the way.
Totally.
Yeah, so it's like we now look at his life and we look at Amazon, and you get a job at Amazon. It's like a great job, but like the early days were like that. Like the early days of most things, and where you like build your opportunity, it looks like that.
And that's why I think that the funnest thing about like working early days of Vivint Solar, working early days of Apex or Vivint is exactly that. Like you go through like the travel lodge days so people can have like the podcast studio days. Like it's just fun. I appreciate like the wild, wild west and things. Like when things get like, when you just have to like figure it out, it's fun.
I remember when we were creating the Alchemy sales region. So this would have been 2000, whatever, 11 maybe.
Yeah.
And so Eric Mealy, Jason Brown, Scott Brown, and Alan Swick came over to meet at my house. And we were going to like talk about how to build this new region.
Was that the house with the motorcycle in Pleasant Grove?
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that.
I don't know if I'll ever have a house that cool again.
I never went in it, but I remember you showed me pictures of it. And
I didn't invite you
never. Never.
I'm really sorry, man.
Different regions.
Yeah.
We were friends at the gym.
That's true. And we couldn't let our regions know.
No, you can't. Of course not.
We've come a long way there. But they came over and I remember like, okay, hey, this meeting is to talk about our new region. And Scott brought a binder, a 3-ring binder with all of his like trainings in it, like these papers. And he's like, hey, I brought my materials. And I, you know, I'm like a pretty digitally savvy person. And I remember looking at it like, I always send you that picture, that gif of Gosling where he's like, oh no, like from Crazy Stupid. But he started opening his binder and I was like, what are we doing? Yeah.
Stop.
But it was like good stuff in there. But like, dude, that's what the early days look like. Like now we have so much technology, so many things accessible. And there's beauty in both of those things. But you're right. There's like a special like draw to that time where you're like, you're over your skis, you're trying to figure it out.
Yep.
How many people now could say like, hey, for the next, like you took this new job, you have to go to the Tri-Cities, you're going to meet in the travel lodge for 3 months.
3 months.
Seems unlegit.
Totally unlegit. Totally. And then have the technicians that you're installing your jobs show up in their unmarked cars and their vans. It was so good though. And that's like, truthfully, like I was saying, that's the gritty process is just really fun. Mm-hmm. It's fun. And it allows you to be a little more creative. It allows you to provide solutions. And just like it's all up to you in a sense, which I love about everything.
Yeah, and I think door-to-door sales will always be a little like that because even if you have good technology, even if you have good training, you still have to like learn to walk because there's nothing really like it, right? Yeah. And so even if you have those tools, you still have to get out and make something kind of out of nothing. You know what I mean? So I bet everybody to some degree feels like I remember my first door. You remember like your first doors?
Absolutely.
I remember my first door.
Yeah. And the best part about this though, like this whole like industry or not, is you really can't you can't fake it and everyone has to go through it.
Yeah.
Whether it takes you a day to go through it or 3 months, everyone has to go through it at different speeds, but you all go through the same thing. Whether you're figuring out for you might have taken 7 minutes on how to transition, might take someone else a week.
Yeah.
But everyone has to figure like each part out and you just can't fake it.
Dude, I was actually a pretty slow starter. My first summer. I was like kind of like I always say I was like the high side of average, but it took me a second. It wasn't like I remember when you came in and it was immediately like, oh, what did you do your first year?
300.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
So I've done 300 once.
Yeah.
Right. And you know, Jordan was that way.
Jordan was amazing.
Just started really fast.
Yeah.
But it took me a second to figure it out.
Yeah.
You know, like it took me a second to figure it out. But I remember like you know that feeling like when you transition into a house, you kind of like lower your eyes, lean forward, and it's like, all right, you're going to have to put your hand up or something because that momentum is almost like when you jump off a cliff.
Yeah.
It's like right before you completely let go, you feel that like it's a bit like that. And I do think everyone has to go through that.
Everybody. Yeah. It's a great process. You learn a lot and you learn more about anyone else. Like if you spend like a day on the doors with someone, it's equivalent to like 6 months of just like hanging out with them, right? You just learn so much and you see kind of how they react and what they do in response to like trials and challenges. It's really cool. Very character revealing.
Yeah, I think what you see is which way you see their grit almost immediately, but you see how their mind works. Right? Like you get rejected 3-4 like so back to that day in Orange with you. We're walking around, we both know how to do it. We know it's going to be a long day, whatever. But like I could just tell like the person that's in front of me and the person that was out there, same guy.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
You get some people out there and you're like, down what or you get one or two things and you can reveal they start to think different, they start to speed up, they start to get stressed, right? Like It is a very good test.
But you probably talk about this all the time, but like it's so interesting as you like people always wanted to knock with you back in the day. We've all knocked with like 1 million people. And every time I'd have like a really good guy come with me and they'd see me just like get my face kicked in for like 4 hours. They're like, "Oh, Reno, I'm so sorry. Is it?" I'm like, "Dude, this is normally like what it is.
It's nice to have someone. It's nice to have a friend today.
Exactly how it is. It's just like you keep going." So there's no like magic solution to it, of course. But I just remember so many people would knock with me. They're like, "No, what do you really do?" I'm like, "I just keep doing this. I'm just the same person. We just keep doing this. It's just like a enduring thing. You just have to endure it." So
Yeah.
that would happen all the time.
I remember a new rep came out in the summer once with Eric Mealy was visiting the office as the regional manager, and he took him out on the doors for the day, and he had sold 3, and all 3 were weird. Some crazy thing that you had to figure out, or this person's not back yet, so let me just fill this out, and then like some getting it done. And at the end of the day, he was all proud. He's like, "Man, I showed you 3 sales. Like that's a good day."
Yeah.
And the rep was like, "So I kind of want to like go with you tomorrow." And he's like, "Why? We saw 3." And he's like, "Well, I want to see like what a normal sale looks like." And he's like, "I don't know what that means. Like, is there a normal sale? You know what I mean?"
No.
He's like, most of these are like, it's not like I get like posted up at the 3-point line. No one's around me.
Yeah.
I bounced twice, set up, and put it in. It's always like, oh yeah, someone kind of got me in the eye as I got that one off. And you know what I mean?
Good way to put it. I kind of didn't like when I knocked with people. I kind of didn't like to sell a lot. I'm like, "Hey, dude, not normally how it is.
Yeah.
I want you to sell. I want you to go because it's coming."
And they start answering questions in the meeting the next day, and you're like, okay.
Exactly. And then they go, even if they go on their own and sold like 3, I'd be like, "I
Yeah.
don't know if you're ready for that yet because it's coming. Like the hard part's coming. And I don't want you to get used to 3 a day, but I want you to build towards it." So I kind of just like not like them seeing me go through what you had to really go through before you made a sale.
Yeah. Like I always tell people that you learn what to say in like an open gym setting. So like you come into an office and you rep it out 1,000 times.
Yep.
You learn how to be on the doors. Like
That's right.
when you're out with somebody, I feel like, okay, if you want to like learn how to fight, you don't go out
Fighting?
when I can. I actually have another session on Monday.
That's awesome.
Yeah. It was really good for me. So I loved doing it, but I only get in every so often now. But if I want to learn how to fight, I don't go with a fighter downtown, like the bad part of town on a Friday night at 11:45 and see what we can kick up, right? Like I'm not going to learn. And if it goes off, it's going to be weird. Like something crazy is going to happen. You go to the gym and you rep it out. But when you're on the doors, what's important, I think, and honestly for new reps that are listening, like a lot of times they think they want to see how it's done. But in knocking with you, it's good that you tried. That wasn't any different than I said. And lots of people said no.
Yep.
But you drop it a lot faster and keep moving. Or you sell one and then you go sell another one. You don't go home.
That's right.
Right? Like you just keep going. And like that's what my like a lot of my, call it like sales acumen or whatever, came from, was just seeing people and drawing conclusions and being like,
Yeah.
"Oh, you're unaffected by this," or "Oh, you're still pushing," or "Oh, you got 3 and it's only 4:00."
A lot less about what they say, but how they say it and how they react to certain things, 100%.
Yeah. It's how they are. It's like how they navigate.
Yep.
Best picture number 3.
Okay.
Do you know what one it is?
Seal.
Irvine, California.
Oh, okay. I don't.
Your office. Poor Reno's never given himself an office. You guys, you should see Reno's house. He has like the most beautiful house ever. No office.
No op.
And I think it's reminiscent of this picture in
I
Irvine.
do remember with my kids jumping.
Yeah. So,
During our conference calls.
yeah.
I
So,
had one of my few posts on Instagram, I think.
yeah, big family, small house.
Yeah.
So in Irvine, running Southern California region.
Yep.
And we had just got off a call and Reno sent me a picture. He's like, "This is what my life is like." And he's at this desk, which I see you at the desk,
Yeah.
like on our Zoom.
A desk meaning a table from IKEA, guys.
Yeah.
Or not a desk. It's a table from IKEA.
Like a Lifetime pop-up. And then in the back, there's literally kids jumping on the bed trying to get your attention.
Yes.
You know?
That's so awesome. We need to bring those back. I'm going to get those to you.
Yeah.
Those are
What
such
if-
great memories. Those are some of my funnest times.
But honestly, like for me, like that's how you have done your work. Like that's where you've put in and you've made a lot of stuff without, you've produced a lot without having a lot. You know what I mean? And
Yeah,
I think
thank you.
I think that's character inducing. I worry about your kids growing up in that nice, beautiful home with these super attentive, awesome.
I had this conversation with you. I told you.
You got to like cut the
Be a
heat.
worse father?
Yes.
Oh, no.
You should. You should do. That's the key to that. You gotta neglect those kids a little bit. No, I'm just kidding. It's just the times though, and like what it's forged and what it's created. So, talk about, so you ran that team for a while. You had the experience of going with a competitor. Can we talk about this?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. We haven't talked about this very often face to face, but
We talk about it.
I was thinking about this when you were.
I don't like talking about past sins, but we can talk about it.
But hey, if we're going to, no, I think it's awesome because I think it's real perspective on one thing kind of leading to another.
Absolutely.
And I think it's something that people go through. And it honestly, like, it's been one of the most so we worked together for a long time. You were running a very dominant office, then a dominant region,
Yep.
had a lot of sales influence, and then made the choice to go with Solar City right when Solar City was converting to Tesla, and they had this big grand vision.
That's right.
And honestly, it was a very compelling vision. I'll let you kind of take it from there.
Yeah, so it was one of those things, and I think there's a lot deeper something to it that we can go into if we want. But yeah, it was super compelling at that time, and still today. Like, arguably, Tesla's like the best, the most recognizable, coolest, most innovative brand like in the world. One of them.
Yeah, one of them for sure.
Yeah, and so everyone always asks me like, "Hey, dude, why did you leave?" And I'm like, I don't know, because I loved everything about what we were doing. I think also what's a blessing and a curse is I really like to like have new experiences and build new things, right? And so, and I don't think it would have ever happened if I didn't have my best friend over there kind of selling me this vision and everything. So it was probably, there's a lot of hard things I've done, and I actually was like going through like the hardest thing, and that's the top 3 hardest thing I've ever done is leave what we were doing. Regardless of, like, on paper, it looked like Reno, people leave jobs all the time.
Yeah.
People change businesses all the time.
Yeah.
Why is this such a big deal to you? And to me, it was like, this sounds really lame, but it was like, I hate leaving. Like, work is more than a work to me.
It's who you
just
are.
fucking work.
Yeah.
And it's really personal. It's very like family oriented. And so leaving something like that, something that the average American does like every other year, for me is like really, really hard. Really hard. So went there. Do you want me to keep going?
Yeah.
Ran California as a VP for Tesla. Sounds better, but Solar City was transitioning to Tesla. And we got about a year into it. And
Was it that long?
1 year and 1 month.
Wow.
1 year and 1 month. And then Elon kind of shut it down, didn't want the brand on the doors, or they were going a different way. And to be honest, and this is something I've probably never told you, but it was one of those things where just like I kept doing it, not realizing like, I don't know if I feel great about this. It was just like really hard for me. And so
I remember, sorry to cut you off. I remember you wouldn't be photographed. Like,
didn't want to do the podcast.
didn't want to do the podcast. Yeah. Like,
I'm like, why am I
that was the
doing
thing
this?
that they would do is they would get a leader and then immediately put it on social media. And then like,
Yeah.
and I remember 2 things. They also wore sport jackets all the time. And I would always joke with you, like, dude, you're going to be in a sport jacket. And you're like, I'm not going to be in a sport jacket, dude.
If anyone ever catches me in a sport jacket with nice shoes on and jeans, it's not me.
It's not you.
Not me.
But I remember that there was always a little bit of hesitancy there. Were you at the solar roof reveal?
Yeah.
Was that the Desperate Housewives set that they did that on?
It was.
I think it was.
And it was in Universal Studios.
Yeah, I think it was on Wisteria Lane.
You're probably right.
I think it was. I think that was like one of the things. But I always remember you being like, "Yeah, don't put me on camera." And
No, I didn't know. I really didn't know. Like, it's one of the things you're like, a lot of people are like, oh, it sounds amazing. That'd be so cool. I'm like, dude, for me, for a lot of people, it was great. For me, it was just a really hard decision to leave something that was really, really cool and I really enjoyed doing. And that's kind of what happened. So did that for a year. That stopped. Really good friends with Alex and Todd wanted me to come back to kind of run the new Vivint retail.
before that,
Yeah.
I actually misremember this all the time. I remember you texting me when they decided to shut down their sales.
I remember that. I remember
But I can't remember if we were together because I have pictures of us at Doheny. Remember, you're on the phone or I'm on the phone. We're either like on a motorcycle. I can't remember if that was that day or right after that or something.
it was after that. We were together getting our haircut.
Was that same day?
Yeah,
That was
our
that was like one of the worst haircuts I've.
and
It was
and
such
that was the
haircut.
day that Tesla announced that they were acquiring Solar City or something like that. But that was the day that I think you're talking about.
I thought I have another one of us, and I thought it was the day they shut down the sales force.
We weren't together. I remember reaching out to you like, hey, dude, this is what's happening.
That's right.
And you probably should lean in because a lot of people are going to lose jobs.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wild. What was that like that day?
It was almost kind of, for me, because I didn't enjoy it as much and I knew I was kind of not in the right spot. It was like, okay, cool. I tried that, yeah. Because I always look at things in like worst case scenario. I'm like, if I make this decision, worst case scenario, it all shuts down, and then I'm back to ground zero. And that's exactly what happened. That's really what happened.
Did you make peace with it before you go?
Totally. You have to.
The worst thing that can happen.
Yeah.
I'm a lot that way too.
Yep. And that's what happened. So I was, but then it was really hard for sure.
I remember
a lot of people, but for me it was hard.
Well, and I remember like Vivint Solar and now Sunrun, they're such like, the relationships run really deep. And so it's such like a people business. And I remember being shocked because again, it's pretty much my only experience. Most of my professional life, actually all of my professional life has been with some variation of this company, right?
Yeah.
And so to hear that like they did a conference call, closed it down, no warning, offered everybody a $1,500 or not, like stipend or whatever.
And John Woodfield might be listening to this. I was on a bike ride with John Woodfield when I found out.
Oh, is that what it was?
Yeah, that's exactly. I remember
Like a road bike ride, like training for something?
Yeah, we had stopped to like do something, I think, and that's when I found out. Yeah, grabbed like a smoothie or something.
In my head, that's not possible. You have 100 conversations first, but they were like, Elon, have you read his new book?
No. I heard it's amazing.
It's really good, and you should listen to it because the Solar City part is very interesting.
Oh, wow.
There's a whole section on it. Really? You know, him and Lyndon still don't talk.
No way.
He's like, so again, different worlds, because the way we view solar, and you're, part of the company in a roundabout way again.
Yeah.
But the way that he views it is he's really mad at him still. He's still really mad at Lyndon for
really.
Yeah, because he thought like a sales culture was like a like defamed the brand and was like despicable to the brand. Yeah, he has a certain way of viewing it, and so he says like the language is strong, and he's like, I still hate my cousin for turning it into that. And then the narrator Walter Isaacson wrote it, and he's like, yeah, they literally haven't spoken since. Like he shut that down, and it was over.
But he is like, and that's what sales at like the Sunruns and the Vivins of the world. It's like everything, right? It's like so important. It's so valued. But in other places, like it's just not. And it's so weird if you go from like arguably what they take sales and Vivint and they like build around it to support sales. And that's how it should be in all of our minds, because that's super valuable. But it's the other way for a lot of these other companies, and it's really hard. And you can't really explain it unless you've like been there. Like you just can't. Because I felt every time at Vivint Solar, or I'm sure it's like this at Sunrun, is sales reps, what do you need? We're going to build around it, and we're going to grow like that. And we're going to build the product around what you guys kind of want. But it's not like that at other companies. It's just not. They don't have that culture. And Elon's one of the few people that can probably build a product and not really have salespeople, I guess, which he does with his cars.
Sure.
But it was just a lot different. And I came from just the complete opposite, and it was hard. Very hard.
I'm sure. And that was one of those things, like, so the thing that I was thinking about, when you were going to come say hi, I actually didn't plan on recording this, but like, I just think your story is awesome, and I think it's going to be valuable to a lot of people.
Yeah.
And so I remember, like, I always think about that because that was one of like the shocks of my career. Like,
one of the shocks of mine too.
Reno leaving was like, I mean, I have like, I think I've told you this before, but like, it took me a second to like, I learned a lot about how to manage through crisis. I learned a lot about how to navigate relationships. I learned a lot about, I had to figure out like what is my path here with somebody, because we always stayed friends. You never came against the business. Like, it literally was, I've taken this other opportunity, and we stayed friends and did stuff together and hoped for the best for each other. And I've always appreciated that.
Yeah.
But I look back now and
I've called Ty multiple times, almost crying, like, hey dude, I'm sorry. I should not have done that. I was like, what are you apologizing for?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. It just didn't feel right.
But there is some things there, like, I know you had said like you felt like I didn't fight to keep you here, and that I felt like I had to react so quickly because I went to this fear place where I was like, because the context that people maybe don't have that weren't there is Hayes, who's really good.
Hayes is incredible.
Hayes is really good.
He's an incredible visionary.
Yeah. And has done great things, right? Good Leap and Solar City. And I mean, he's really good.
Mortgage company before.
Yeah, and I've never met him.
Very charismatic.
That's what everybody says. I remember when you were like, dude, You should talk to him. And I remember like soft offers coming my way that I never entertained. But at the time, Tesla was going to be, they had this vision of we're going to do the whole ecosystem. We're going to do cars, batteries, solar. Then Solar Roof came out. And sales reps thought they would be selling Tesla. They got a little bit aggressive with door-to-door sales for a second, and they were paying more than us. We had tons of problems in our company from like being a very young company.
Yep.
And you were like a keystone leader. And so when you had made that decision, I think I would have handled that a lot different now, obviously. Like if you're not a little embarrassed at who you were, I mean, that was 8 years ago.
Yeah.
Right.
And it was so, and like you said, it was so uncharacteristic. Like if you would have asked me, I'd be like, I'm the last person that will ever leave anything.
Yeah. The phone call was, I mean, all right, friends. So here's the deal. Reno and I just talked for about, 15, 20 minutes about some amazing life stuff, and the podcast machine shut off. So it did not get recorded, but I feel like it'd be like
really great.
Yeah, I had a great time. That last 15 minutes was for me and you.
Wow.
Yes.
I wish you guys would have heard it. It's been so good.
So we talked about, kind of how throughout all that stuff we grow and we learn and we develop as leaders, and we ultimately end up where we need to be.
Correct.
So you were talking about what you're doing now.
Yep.
And how you kind of came to that moment.
Yeah, so I've been in sales and solar my entire career, and in doing that, we would always see like deficiencies, and in talking to a lot of people like in the space that I am in now, and a lot of like VC guys or whatever, and how they invest in companies. Someone said something so critical. He said most great companies are born out of like unique experiences or something that you like experienced, right? And most of the time that to me is like, it's almost like unique suffering. Like you went through something really hard and you found a really hard thing to solve and you experienced a lot of it, and that's like where great companies are born from. And we're by far not there yet, but I think the problem was real, whereas roofing with solar was really hard and it was really timely, and you never really knew what was happening, and you didn't know if the customer was going to get a great service or if the guy was going to be licensed or insured or anything. You just didn't even know. So as a sales rep, that was really hard for me when you'd sell someone and then they'd say a new roof needs to be done. And at that point, you kind of just,
we used to say it was
kind of just shut down.
Kiss of death.
Yeah.
If somebody need electrical or roof work, that was the kiss of death.
It just made all that work just almost wasted in a sense, to where customers are excited to go solar. Now they have to get a roof. It just was really hard. So what I wanted to do was initially I wanted to like streamline roofing for solar. Then it moved into, we just want to modernize roofing for the solar market. That's kind of where we're at right now. And then it transformed into like building a roofing marketplace for solar. So initially I partnered with a bunch of other solar companies, paused doing that, went all in with Sunrun when Sunrun went all in with us. Because as you're starting a company, I've found that it's a lot easier to build for one customer, build great software for their products, for their process, and just really focus and dial it in. And that's where a lot of people, I think, get lost, is initially I wanted like everyone, everywhere, all the time. And it just we were providing a good service, not a great one, and we want to provide a great one. And so we went all in with Sunrun, and that's where Remi was started. So right now we're a marketplace in the sense that DoorDash is a marketplace, right? So when you order food, DoorDash has like restaurants, dashers, and customers. And we have Sunrun roofers and customers, right? So in a sense, we've made it to where all these roofers are vetted on our platform. When you order a DoorDash, you don't really like, hey, can Johnny deliver my food? Johnny might be up in Costa Mesa and someone else is down here in San Clemente. But that's kind of where we're at. So we've vetted them. We have their capacity. We have everything that they do. We have them geographically based. And so when Sunrun, most of Sunrun's work right now, we're working up to all of it, but a lot of Sunrun's roof work comes through us. And we've pre-negotiated pricing on everything to where everything that comes through, we have an entire team and software built to make it to where roofing goes through quicker, easier, the customer gets a better experience, and the quality is a lot higher. So that's kind of the problem we wanted to solve, and it's going well.
How many roofs do you guys do a month now? And where will you be?
We probably get about 120 like NTPs a week right now. And it hasn't been like that, a notice to proceed.
Okay.
Like it hasn't been like that. I mean, we're 2 years old on April 1st. So we share
the same birthday.
To see. Yeah, exactly. But we've it's grown quite a bit since we partnered with Sunrun and just focused on that. So we get about 115 to 120 NTPs a week right now, and I think it's going to, as sales ramp and as the summer gets, it's probably going to go 200 plus. And then also we're really focusing our software on the R&R perspective, which is post PTO,
nice.
which is where a lot of customers suffer and where we're really focusing a lot of our efforts.
I had two thoughts. So the first of all, I used your service like when you were just starting it, and it was awesome then.
Or at least, yeah.
I mean, I know you, and I was like, it was like you and like your CFO that I was talking to, right?
Probably. He was my old partner. It was, I can't remember.
His name Dan or something?
Curtis. Yeah.
Not Dan.
Not Dan.
But I remember it, like the difference that it makes to have somebody that's like an expert in like sales and like what the customer experience is, handling that process.
But our software now, like you said, our software now is like, I look back at what we had when you used it and I'm like, oh man, that was not good. But I thought it was amazing. It's kind of like when you wear like, you have that favorite pair of pants and you get a new pair of pants and you look at your old pair and you're like, those are horrible. Why didn't someone tell me?
From like years
Why didn't someone tell me?
Yeah.
But no, we've tried really hard because I see it from a sales perspective and I'm sensitive to everything. And so I think that's really helped us like build our software. We have a phenomenal CTO and everything, but it's all come from like the sales perspective and like managing what is a very, very complicated process, which people don't really think it is, but finding great labor, great roofers, great processes, and the R&R piece is just very complex as well. We're using software to streamline all that.
Yeah, it's great. The other thing that I was going to talk about for a second is I find it interesting that you mentioned suffer. That's like, I don't know if you identify it as this, but that's kind of like a Reno word that I found. Like,
totally.
I remember when you were here as a sales leader, and you were working on ways to like score and rank people.
Yeah, I've always wanted to do that because like most people, I feel like with Strava, they have the suffer score.
Yeah.
When you're like on a ride.
So what is that, like super elevated heart rate or something like that?
Yeah, it's like how fast, or I don't even know the formula. It's probably like how fast do you go for how long? What's your endurance? And then the steepness of the terrain. I don't know how to calculate this.
Some metric
like that to where you can really see like, we could go the same speed, but your suffer score could be 4, and then mine could be like 12. And I worked out my body got far greater benefits than yours did. But I feel like a lot of that could be applied like on the doors. Mm-hmm. Like there's amazing people like the Dave Madsons and the Jordan Williams. Their suffer score might be a 2 when they sell 3. Someone else's is like a 300 when they sell 3.
Get out of their car, just dunk, dunk, dunk.
But we at least just like know, right? So I think that, and I really I always said, I think I just like, who's the lady that Amelia Boone? She was like the gladiator or the Spartan race champion.
Oh, I don't know.
And her big thing was like, listen, I'm not the strongest or the fastest. I just suffer better than everybody. And I think that's kind of all I did during the doors. I think I suffered better than most people. Not as more talented by any means, but I think I just suffered more or better. And that's, I want to do the Strava.
I think you're like
knocking suffer score.
Yeah, I think you're like key to success is like suffering plus optimism plus like right, like plus like low resources equals opportunity.
Right. There it is. Yeah, but it's I think it's a thing, and it's what people don't understand about our business. We don't employ roofers, and so I think a lot of people, even for Sunrun people listening, if they have like really good roofers, and it has great roofers, we put them on our platform and we put them on our software, and it's great for roofers because a lot of roofers aren't great at sales,
right?
But they're great at roofing, and if we can get them to where they just take orders, so it's great for the customer because the customer knows, cool, this is going to be warranted, it's going to be quality, and it's going to have a great cycle time. If the rep knows that the customer's getting a good experience, if Sunrun knows that this is getting quicker, I think that's a huge lever for Sunrun to pull, and they agree 1,000%. I was just talking with Jordan the other day with some of your reps out in Utah. If you're really good, you're installing like 100 a year, right?
Yeah.
Pretty much. And with that, you might do 10 roofs, maybe 20 roofs, which equals like 1 to 2 a month. And so just to have this like for 1 to 2 a month and just put through this system, it makes it so much better. So much better.
What advice, 2 pieces of advice before we close out. I think it's actually kind of beautiful that like 20 minutes of this conversation no one will ever hear.
It was actually, should we like tease it a little bit?
Well, we could tease it, but we're never going to play it because
it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It exists between us.
Between us forever. So, piece of advice you give to somebody getting started in direct to home, and then a piece of advice you'd give to somebody that's just become a leader.
Yeah. Do you give these questions to people beforehand so they can think about it?
No,
it's always on the spot. That's impressive.
I just want to know, like, I don't want to like well prepared thought. I want, like, as you look back at your experience and as we've just recounted a lot of it.
Yeah.
What sticks out? Because, you know, when I look at you and your career, you've had some things that, because of your disposition and because of your mindset and because of your skill set, you've kind of navigated from path to path, and you've been successful everywhere you've gone. I think a lot of people would have walked that path and it would have crushed them, and they would have been like, see, this is why you should never do hard things. This is why you should never do sales, or this is the risk you take, right? Like, what I'm interested is, how do people persevere and kind of find their way?
Yeah.
You know?
No, I think that's a good question. So first question is, if I was just starting.
Yeah, like, what advice would you give to some of our newer reps? I mean, we're onboarding hundreds of reps every month.
That's amazing. So I think I would pull the Ty Williams probably. And I think some of the best, most talented, hardest working people are in the door knocking industry. That's just how it is. Like, of any industry or anyone else I've visited or talked to, it really does come down to, like, very motivated, talented people are in the knocking industry, which is great. But as we talked about earlier, what you did is, when you came on, you came from being, and most people that come into Sunrun, I'm sure, were very successful at their other jobs. I'm sure they were.
Yeah.
And so it's really hard to come into some other job not thinking like, hey, dude, I don't have anything to learn. I'll just go out and figure this out like I always do. But what Ty did was, Ty's like, listen, I was one of the top guys at Vivint forever. I'm going to come into solar. I'm going to knock with 3 people. I'm going to humble myself, one of them being me. I'm going to figure out what these guys are doing. I don't have to do exactly that, but I'm going to figure out what they're doing and why they're doing it, and then implement it into what I do and why I do things. So I think it's just finding out, and this is such a basic answer, but it's real, is learning from the best and figuring out like what everybody else does, and being humble enough to be like, hey, I'm going to start this. I'm going to try new things, and I'm going to figure it out. And then, of course, it's just suffering better than most people. It's just working harder and longer and suffering better than other people do, and maintaining that optimism that is very, very hard.
Yeah, it's hard.
Because there's a ton more talented people that should have far outsold me. There just is.
Yeah.
They're just.
Well, and I also think too, like, when you use the word suffer, I was just thinking about what that meant. I can't remember who says, it might be James Lawrence. It might be Iron Cowboy that says that I'm just good at suffering. Could be that. Anyway, I don't think it means what people think it means. It's not like you're a dog about to die. Like, no, don't let it suffer, right? It's that you're feeling an elevated state of pain and you don't run from it.
And you continue to do it.
That's right.
For a long period of time.
Yeah.
Without getting like discouraged.
But it's interesting because even like, think about like body science that's coming out right now, like on like, you know, they talk a lot about the benefits of cold plunging and of heat and sauna and stuff, because our lives are pretty comfortable. Like, everything is climate controlled, and our bodies are actually meant to like vary and do their thing. And so when you make it suffer, it actually performs better, right? Like,
absolutely.
When you strain it, when you run, when you exercise, when you heat it up and cool it off really fast, like, that's actually better. And so I think it's kind of the same thing for our souls. Like, I really was thinking that, because it's like, suffering sounds like something someone should stop so that you can die in peace. But I don't think that's what it is.
No, not at all. And so I just saw this thing, and this is super cool. One of my favorite CEOs, the guy from NVIDIA. Have you ever seen any of his stuff?
I actually think I just got sent a video on him the other day.
It's incredible. So he was speaking to, I think, Stanford grads, and he's like, listen, like, you guys are like insanely intelligent. He's like, one thing that doesn't translate over to is character.
Yes, I actually did see the short. Yeah, keep going.
It's incredible. So he's like, you guys are super smart. One thing, it doesn't, just because you don't have character. And the only way you build character is to go through a significant amount of suffering. He's like, so if I were to like wish anything upon you guys, I wish you heaps and heaps of suffering. That's just what I do. Pain and suffering. Yeah. And it was so relevant. I'm like, that is so well said, because no one you ever talk to that's like at any position that anyone would want to be in, this is super successful at anything, they're never like, dude, it was so easy the whole time. I got everything right the first time.
Lucky.
It was amazing. Yeah. Literally every day I wake up, nailed it every day. Like, they just don't do that. And the people you admire are the people that have gone through like really hard things and made it out the other side just way better for it. Because there's a time where, so I just think like, I would wish upon the first year reps heaps and heaps of suffering. Like that's what I would tell people. And if you're going through that, that's exactly where you should be. If you're not going through it, you probably should reconsider like what you're doing. It's either because you're going home too early or not pushing yourself enough. But I thought the CEO of NVIDIA said it so well, because that's how you build character. That's the only way you can build character, is going through really hard things for a really long time.
Yeah, it's not like when people are like, "What do you do?" It's like, well, you have that information. It's not, and honestly, it's not that,
Right.
right? Like that's the thing that you're asking is not the thing that's going to help you be good at this.
And if you think about like the hardest things, like I think graduating college was hard. I thought it was hard. Completing a mission was pretty hard. I think hitting a baseball is pretty hard. So that's one of the hard things. Having your daughter go through cancer is pretty hard. Knocking doors is just hard. It's really hard. And then I've realized building a company is like really, really, really hard. Like 1,000 times harder than I thought it was ever going to be, just because you do stuff that you just have never done. So all these hard things that you do, if you don't have like that list of, that guy's not a very interesting person, or he doesn't have a lot of character. You have nothing to offer.
Well, and you can't relate to most people, right? Because again, like one of the things that I love about the companies that we've been a part of is the leaders sell. Like we
Absolutely.
front. And so you have a person that has been through it that can lead you through it. I don't know how to do it in any other way. You know, like I was thinking the other day about, you know, when I came into this industry, I'd come in, there were some people here that had been here before, and, you know, I was made the leader and other people wanted to be the leader, but they gave me that job. Remember, because I applied and I dressed nice, and
So did I, but
my thing.
finally, my stories remembered.
You just went from the parking lot and been like pointed down and then drove away. But you know, a lot of the things that you go through are so that you can help other people through them. It's awesome that it helps you, but it's like really like the multiplier effect is so that you can help other people. And so I think that topic or that thought of like kind of embrace this. I mean, the SEALs say that, right? Embrace the suck. Like, don't fight it. Like, don't try to get out of it. Your body's going to try to like, and your brain's going to try and get you away from the pain. It's trying to keep you alive.
Yep.
But I can think of so many times where I've been in neighborhoods and just been like,
Totally.
you know, like I'm alone.
Yeah.
I'm losing. I need to win.
Yep.
And you just keep going. Like that's the thing, you know?
Yeah.
So I asked you, what advice do you have? And you said, I hope you suffer. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think it's real though, because I think that's the only way, like all of your top reps, and you've always done a really good job. But I remember even calling you like a year ago and you're like, hey dude, I'm going to be on the doors. I'm like, you're still on the doors? That's so cool. You're a senior VP of sales, or is that your title?
Yeah.
I don't know. Biggest salesperson in the, I don't know. But it's so impressive to do.
I love that in a direct sales game, there's no respect for the title. It's what do you do? Whatever you are anyway.
Yeah, you're amazing.
It doesn't matter.
You're amazing. But it's so impressive that you do that, because you can't that's why I'm always, you can't ever lose that. You just can't. You have to stay close to it. And the fact that you do that's really impressive.
Well, thanks. I've talked about this before, but have you seen The Kid? Disney's The Kid with Hollywood's Bruce Willis.
Yes.
So you're at the very beginning of The Kid. So it's when he's like an image consultant. He's kind of a jerk, and then he meets his self as a child, and it changes him.
Yeah.
The very beginning, he's in the airport at like a newsstand or something, and this lady is buying something, and she's taking forever. So he's right behind her trying to catch his plane, and she's like buying something, and she's like, now where did I put my? And he just reaches up and puts his card in the machine and says, I got it. And she goes, oh, you didn't have to do that for me. And he goes, I didn't do it for you. I always think of that when people say it's awesome that you like go visit teams and go on doors, because thank you. It's purely selfish. Like, I only do it because I don't feel like I have anything to offer. Because, dude, customers change. They're different every 6 months, and the product is different, and different people are buying homes.
That's been made very apparent over the last year in solar.
Right? And like the exposure they get to different content and media, like it is different now. And so it's like I need to go see teams and go out like and close deals with reps and stuff in order to keep making the right decision.
Yeah.
You know, like you can't really train unless you do it.
Yeah.
You know?
No, that's really, and a lot of people don't do that. And that's why I think you guys are so successful, because you do lead that from the front. So that's impressive.
So you kind of answered it there, but for a leader, for someone that wants to get into leadership or just became the leader of a team.
Yeah. I think leadership it's definitely the funnest part of, and I love managing like people. I do think it's important that you let them know, like, and this is one of the, I don't know if this was cut off or not, but this was one of the, you do need to have that optimism, but you also need to let your people see you, like, and it's all the suffering theme right now. You do need to let your people see you suffer, because you can't, like, just like you've done in your position, you are not above doing anything. You're knocking, you're selling, and that's, I think, what you need to do as a leader, because as soon as leaders forget to do that, then you don't really have the respect, you lose the hearts and the minds, and I would just say don't ever be above doing anything, and continue to do what got you there and help other people get where they want to be. Not very interesting answer, but like that.
No, well, it's more interesting because I know that like you've been running a startup business for a while.
Yeah.
And it's funny because like the thought of you or Doug being above something is probably kind of laughable, because you're like, who's going to do it? If your job as a business owner, or like we call them suburbanpreneurs, so we're running a business funded by somebody else. So your job is to do what needs to be done. That's the job. Right? Like, yeah, it's not like, oh, that's not my job. It's like, dude, there's no one coming to say, like, you know, I remember there was a, I think you were still here for this part, but we were trying to hit a goal. This is in Thousand Oaks. We were trying to hit a goal of 400 installs in a quarter. And dude, think about the incentives back then. We had we had committed Chance Allred that if we hit 400, he would come on our team trip with us.
To like Skippers?
No, we went camping. We went camping at Pismo Beach. It was awesome. But it probably cost $200.
Totally. You know? I remember being with Chance at a Lakers game, or no, outside of the Staples Arena, and the Kings, LA Kings, were playing like the Stanley Cup. We're like, Chance, let's go. He's like, can't go, dude. We're not buying. You were there, I think. And
I wasn't.
We're like, we're not. I was like, we're not going to get tickets. We're literally outside the arena right now, and I don't think we ever got tickets.
Yeah, no, it was different times back then. I remember finishing meetings and being like, hey, let's go buy shoes. And then him being like, you know, for like the whole crew. We used to do that all the time.
So,
but yeah, we did. We were trying to hit this goal so we could go camping with Chance. And Jason,
that's so cool.
Crown was trying to hit a certain number. And you remember how many pull-offs we had because we didn't have tall enough ladders? You remember those days?
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's like the install crews would go and they'd be like, yeah, we pulled off because our ladders aren't tall enough. And in my head, I'm like,
I'm going to go find a ladder.
Yeah, I'm going to go strap a ladder to the top of this Prius and I'll be there in an hour.
See, I knew Ty in the Prius days.
Yeah, dude. Those are some of my best days.
Good days.
So anyway, it was one of those, and it was like 3 p.m. at this point, and Crown was just like, back to like, your job is to do what needs to be done. And so they'd called him like, dude, we can't do the job. And he's like, we got to do the job. And so they're like, we need like a scissor lift or something to do this. So he's like, hold on. So it's literally like 3:00 on a Friday.
I think I remember this story now.
Yeah. So he calls around all these places. He finds a guy that is like, all right, like if you can pay for it and have it back in the next, like, you have to like commit to it in like 10 minutes or something. And he's like, do it. And so he gets the scissor lift. It gets delivered to the house. Like,
does he operate it?
Do the install. I don't think they let just anybody operate that.
Either.
But he was helping install it, lifting panels up on the roof. It's like,
so cool.
Your job is to do what needs to be done. And he could have been like, yeah, definitely not my job. But then you can't have the install.
Totally.
You know? And so it's not always appropriate to do that. But I love seeing like the leaders are the ones that I always say they make up the difference. They're the ones that make up the difference, right? Like they do everything that they can and then they make the difference up. Last story, I was in Utah a couple weeks ago, and we were at a Jazz game, and they were playing the Warriors, and it was a pretty close game right up until like probably the last like 5 minutes, and during the last 5 minutes they bring Steph in, and it was cool from where I was sitting because I was right behind the away team's basket, and so I could see him come down court when Steph was doing his work, and I was like, I just like I wanted to watch it as a leader, like. And as not an avid sports fan, like what makes this guy so different, right? And when I looked out there, he wasn't yelling, he wasn't hurried, he wasn't rushing, but he got it done. It was just like everything was a little more deliberate, everything was a little more intentional, everything was but he basically at that point, like he was kind of in the game before, but at that point, he was the clear leader on the field or on the court. Yep. And and I remember thinking, I'm like, I get why they pay that guy a lot. He's really good. And I get why you want him on your team. Like,
absolutely.
The true leader he made up the difference. Like at the very end of that game, he's like, all right, put me in. and I'm going to get this done.
Yeah, and you can articulate it a lot better than most people. And my answers are very like vanilla, but I just get there's only so many things like. And on LinkedIn, people are going through and say, like they shoot out 5 paragraphs. I'm like, you lost me. Just get it done.
Yeah,
like there's just so many things that are just lost and translate. Just I think you said it right. Just get it done. And those are the most impressive people to me. And all the best sales leaders just get it done. Whether it's using a scissor lift or whatever, they just get it done. And so that's why it's so hard for me to watch. Like you can talk about it. It's really easy to talk about it in this air-conditioned podcast studio, but when like it hits the fan and you need to get stuff done, that's when it's like really impressive.
Yeah, I agree. That's really awesome. Hey, well, dude, thank you for showing up. You came to me. You thought you were just gonna high five a friend, and I sat you in the chair for an hour. So
Ty suckered me, and he's like, "Hey, dude, I'm here at this ice cream store just waiting for you." He's like, "Okay, fine, just meet me in my office."
Yeah, my office.
And I pull up, and he's like, "You want to do a podcast?"
Lights are on already. All ready to go.
I'm glad we talked about this. I'm bummed that got erased though. But
yeah,
I hope this was kind of cool. This was fun to chat, so thank you.
It's very good, man, and I appreciate you. I appreciate the friendship.
Absolutely.
Appreciate the leadership. And I wish I could go on this motorcycle ride with you.
We're going to miss you.
All right, man. Thanks for stopping by.
You bet.
If you're listening to this and interested in joining our teams, DM us on Instagram at Run the League.
What are you waiting for? Run the league, shoot us a DM, and let's get going.